Hey guys, my name is Parker. I do the CFD modeling at WMS, and these are 5 things that can go wrong with your CFD model. Probably the first thing that could go wrong with a CFD model is the way that you collect your data. Sometimes I can get file sizes from up to 100 gigabytes, which is just ridiculous and unusable. So what I do is I like to prioritize that data based on the proposed output. So for a steady state file, I might take data every 10 seconds. But for an animation, the frame rate of the animation depends solely on how often you're taking data inputs. And so I'll probably do whatever 24 frame rates is per second, so I can get a full video using upwards of 100, 200 data points. Another big issue would be confusing run order and labeling. So when I first started, I used to use numbers and I just indent runs with underscores. And then I realized that if I had to change something tiny in a model run, I had nothing to describe in the name what that was. So I changed to using more words instead of just numbers, so I could get a better idea of what happened in that simulation without having to go through every single one before it. So one of the biggest issues I had when I was first starting to model in CFD was I was trying to take shortcuts in terms of how many embedded meshes I would use. So what I found out was that rule of thumb is a 2-to-1 ratio between a mesh transition. And I had this project that was 60 meters in length. And for a tiny section of it, I had to model a baffle that was 10 centimeters thick. And I just tried to put 1 or 2 meshes around that baffle. Ended up getting ridiculous errors and run times of upwards of 900 days. And that was just crashed the model. So what I did was I'd use that 1-to-2 ratio, and I'd put 5 or 6 embedded meshes on top coming down onto that baffled area. And that would allow me to cease getting errors and be able to still model in a time that was usable. Another issue, I was modeling a water treatment plant, and we had the full plant with the pipes connecting all the reservoir tanks. And we tried to model the entire plant initially, but we realized that the tanks and the pipes themselves required such different mesh sizes that we realized it would be impossible to model the full size. So an issue we had was just the size of the domain. So what we did was we centered it down around reservoir tank 1, and we modeled that by itself using outlet and inlet parameters rather than having the flow through the entire network of pipes. And we were able to get our run times down to usable time, and we were able to still get the data that the client needed. So probably the most important issue that I've had to face was overcomplicating the model. So with this model here, it was a fishway exit, and I had our downstream outlet boundary modeled with 3 or 4 different parameters. And what we had was, as you can see, it was running fine in a steady state in that first image, and then 5 seconds later, there seems to be some sort of unexplainable explosion down the bottom of the fishway run, and it's thrown water throughout the rest of the domain. And so what I did was I went through and I double checked what was happening at the end there, and I concluded that there was just too much going on and it was just causing all these issues with the model. So what I did was I slimmed it down, made it more elegant, used 1 or 2 less, made it very simple, and we were able to get model run in 24 hours with no issues.